Real quick, before we jump in, I do want to take a minute and just say that we naturally in our lives, we have rhythms built in. They're natural rhythms, and I don't just mean individually, but I mean culturally. Like we have cultural rhythms that just make sense, that are worked into our lives, specifically something that's coming up next week, which is Easter. And in this natural rhythm, people are more inclined to receive an invitation. So next week, we're going to 2 services to make more room, because every seat that's empty in here represents somebody who's not here yet. And here's what's interesting. About 70 to 80% of people say they will go to church. They're likely to receive, they're likely to show up if they just received an invitation. Just somebody simply asking them to come with them. About 70 to 80% of people say, yeah, I would go. So it's that simple. You don't have to complicate it, which means that there are people in your life right now who are a lot closer to showing up than you think. Like there are people who are waiting for an invitation to come to church, and they don't even realize it. So you don't have to overthink it. You can just say, hey, come to church with me. And I want to caveat this with this, because this isn't just about Grace Church. Like, we want to see the kingdom grow. So if you live somewhere, or I'm sorry, if you work somewhere, like if you work in downtown Cincinnati, if you work on the other side of the city, if you work somewhere where people that you work with aren't going to drive to Harrison to go to church, don't invite them here. Tell them to go to church somewhere close to where they are. Like, encourage them to go to church. That's what we want to see happen. So don't overthink it. Next week is Easter. It's the time that people are probably more likely than any other time throughout the year to receive an invitation and to show up to church. So we're going to make room. Now let's go get them. And let's be expectant for what God is going to do. Now to transition. Speaking of expectancy, of expectation, this past week, something special happened in our city. In Cincinnati, opening day it's like right up there. It's like there's Easter, there's Christmas, and then there's opening day, right? Like, it's special. Nobody does it like we do. I don't know if what your algorithm on social media looks like, but other cities post pictures of what their opening day looks like. Nobody's even close. Nobody does it like we do. Like, our city shows up. There's hope. We all walk in with that same expectation. This is our year. And then you go out and lose game 1. And then this is our year quickly turns into emotionally preparing for next year. Because reality hits. And reality and your expectations, they don't always match up. That's Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is there was an expectation, and then reality hit. This is the moment where it feels like everything was about to break open. Beginning the Passion Week, Palm Sunday, Jesus rides into Jerusalem. The crowds are chanting Hosanna, which means save us, deliver us, rescue us. God, act now. There was hope, there was expectancy, there was momentum and energy. It feels like this is the moment that they had been waiting for. But there was a problem. They were right about who Jesus was. They were wrong about what he came to do. Now, the good news in that is what Jesus actually came to do was better than what they wanted. They just couldn't see it yet. Like, they wanted their oppressor to be dethroned. They wanted Rome to fall. They wanted political upheaval. Like, they wanted God to fix everything right now. But Jesus, when he rides in on a donkey, not on a war horse. And within a week, that same crowd that was chanting, Hosanna, save us, deliver us, rescue us, just several days later, they're either standing by silently or they're shouting, crucify him. Why? Because he didn't meet their expectations. And that reveals something that's not only true about them, but true about us as well. It's that we don't struggle to believe in God. We struggle to accept him as he is. Like, believing in him is one thing. That's almost easy. But accepting him as he is, as he reveals himself to be, as he defines himself, that's what's not as easy for us. And that's where Habakkuk is. And as we've been going through chapters 1 and 2, he's not doubting that God exists, but he's struggling with who God is, with how God acts, with what he is doing. Like God hasn't made sense to him. The world hasn't made sense to him. He's looking around and what he believes and what he thinks, they're not matching up. And so in chapter 3, though, something shifts. Like there's a big shift. There's no more arguing with God. There's no more questioning. There's no more belief that God owes him an explanation. In chapter 3, it all shifts to worship. Like he just stops the questioning, stops the complaining and the accusing, and he just starts worshiping. How does he get there? Like how does Habakkuk get to worship? Because in that, his circumstances haven't changed. He's still in the same kind of turmoil politically, culturally. His people are about to be just steamrolled by the Babylons, this evil empire. And even though none of that has changed, he still worships. Because the one thing that has changed is he is now seeing God clearly. And when you see God clearly, everything changes. And that's where we're going to pick up in Habakkuk chapter 3. We're going to start in verse 3. And this is Habakkuk, this is his third prayer. And it says, God comes from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. Now, off to the side, you're going to see that little word Selah. Selah, it's what people believe is this is a kind of like a grammatical instrument used in worship. And when I say grammatical instrument, I don't mean this is like the actual instrument you play, but this is a technique. So after you read that word Selah, you'll see it here, because this is likely a prayer or song. You'll see it in the Psalms as well. That's saying pause and reflect. Like it's not a word that was always read publicly. It was more of a cue to stop. Maybe it led into an instrumental, but it was meant to reflect. So he says, God comes from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. Now, when it says Teman and Mount Paran, like does this fit into Habakkuk's prayer? What's happening is Habakkuk is looking back. He's remembering something. Teman just means south. And when you pair that with Mount Paran, it's pointing back to something very specific. The moment that Israel left Egypt. So Habakkuk is remembering this very specific moment. When Israel left Egypt, it's the Exodus, that God splits the Red Sea, the Israelites walk across, and then the water closes in on the Egyptians. And he's intentionally looking back to the time where God didn't feel distant, to where God wasn't, like, his power wasn't questionable, but to a time where God showed up, and it was overwhelming, and it was undeniable. So he's saying the same God that I'm talking to right now, the same God that sometimes feels distant and seems like he might have forgotten about us, it's like, that's the God I'm talking to. He's reminding himself, you're the God who split the sea. You're the God who rescued the Israelites. That's who I'm praying to. He's reaching back to a moment where he can point that God was at work and it was obvious for everyone to see. Continuing in verse 4. His brilliance is like light, rays are flashing from his hand. This is where his power is hidden. Plague goes before him, and pestilence follows in his steps. He stands and shakes the earth. He looks and startles the nations. The age-old mountains break apart. The ancient hills sink down. So these verses show us something very important that I want us to take note of as your first point today. And that's God is not safe. He is holy, he is powerful, and he is overwhelming. The way that we define safety, a lot of times what God calls us to wouldn't fit into that. If God's primary concern was safety, he wouldn't be calling missionaries to go all over the world. He wouldn't send missionaries into third world countries. I've had the opportunity, actually once, but I'm going to go again this year. We have the Southern Baptist Convention, which we're a part of. At the annual meeting every year, we have a IMB commissioning ceremony. It's the best part of the whole thing. It's like the one thing, like we can, as a family, you know how families fight? Well, I don't know if you know this, but everybody in 47,000 churches in the SBC, they don't all get along the same all the time, right? But the one thing that we can all come together and agree on and worship in and pray for and be encouraged by is the IMB commissioning ceremony. It's where we're sending new missionaries all over the world. And there's this shift, and like it gets me every year, like emotionally, where there's all these missionaries, they come up one by one, they say their names and what country they're going to. Names and which country they're going to. And then at one point there's a break. And they bring out this screen. And the screen, it's a white screen, and then they put a light behind it so it's backlit, and then these families come up and they say their name and where they're going to because they can't show their faces in these countries. These countries can't know that they're going there as missionaries because it's too dangerous. If God's primary concern was safety, there would be no reason for that. But he is not safe. He is powerful, he is holy, and he is overwhelming. This is not the God that most people imagine. Like, this is not the God that just says, be a good person and you're cool. God shows up in overwhelming power, and when he does, everything reacts. That's what these verses are saying. Like mountains, they don't stand tall, they make way. Like nations don't stabilize, they start to shake. Even the earth itself, what these verses are saying, the earth itself responds. This is not a God that we approach casually. This is a God that when he shows up, what he does is he reveals how small everything else actually is. And this is what Habakkuk is pressing into. That God is not just a part of this world, but he stands over it. Like nations, governments, cultures, we look at these things as ultimate and having ultimate authority. Like they carry weight, like they get the final say. But when God shows up, when God moves, like none of his creation gets to argue. There's no arguing, there's no negotiating. His authority is not up for debate. What Habakkuk is doing here is he's recovering this right view of God. Like he's kind of displaced God, he's doubted God, he's questioned God, but now he's at the point to where like, you know what? Like everything that I've thought, everything that I've questioned, everything that I've doubted, I was wrong in that. This is who God really is. And this is where our cultural version of God collapses. Because often what we do is we create a God who exists to affirm us, and a God who exists to serve our happiness, like a God who treats, or who we want to treat more like a life coach than a king. But that God does not exist. The true God, the real God, the God that we're reading about here in Habakkuk 3, he has every right to demand our surrender. And here's what's really cool. The same God that we read about here in Habakkuk 3 is the same God that we meet in Jesus. Like, did you see how Habakkuk 3 was describing God? That the earth is full of his praise, the splendor covers the heavens, rays flashing from his hand, brilliance is like a light. You want to know where we see that in Jesus? Go read about the transfiguration in Mark chapter 9. Jesus pulls back the veil on his glory just for a moment. And what happens? It says his face shines like the sun, that his clothes radiate. And the disciples, they don't go up and give him high fives. Like they fall on their face terrified in awe of his holiness, because that is the only response. Or go over to Revelation chapter 1. John sees Jesus again. And when John sees Jesus in Revelation, it says he falls like a dead man. At Jesus' holiness revealed, it says he just falls. It's the same Jesus, just a different clarity. So Jesus is not less than the God that we read about here in Habakkuk 3. He's the full revelation of him. He's who we actually get to see God as. So if your version of God feels manageable and predictable, always agrees with you in your political categories, all you've done is create a version of God in your own image. Just the God who's going to affirm you, confirm your thoughts, and never confront or correct you. And here's why this matters. This isn't just corrective, get a right view of God. But here's why we need a right view of God. Because you cannot lean on a God that you've made up. Like when your whole life starts to unravel, When your life starts to fall apart, when suffering comes, when that diagnosis hits, when your wife says, I'm done, when your husband says, I'm out, when your kids walk away, a God you made up can't hold you. A small God will fail you. But the real God doesn't. The real God doesn't fall apart when your life does. Like he's not fragile. He's not scrambling. He's not shaken. He doesn't shrink under pressure. He doesn't feel exposed when things get hard. He's not just the God you believe in when everything is calm, and then when everything starts to shake, you start to doubt. But he's the one who remains calm when everything else in your life starts shaking. And that's exactly where Habakkuk goes next. That this is the why. This is who he is. Because the God that we're reading about in Habakkuk 3, the God that Jesus reveals to us as he is in the Gospels, this isn't just a God that is overwhelming in his presence, but he's active in his purpose. Like he's not just creating and then winding up and sitting back and watching everything happen, but he is active in his creation. So when we read about these first few verses, about the description of God and who he is and how his power and glory is overwhelming, like you think that's intense, but then look in these next few verses, verses 9 to 15. Habakkuk keeps going. Just take note of some of these descriptions. You took the sheath from your bow, the arrows are ready to be used with an oath. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains see you and shudder. A downpour of water sweeps by, the deep roars with its voice and lifts its waves high. Sun and moon stand still in their lofty residence, at the flash of your flying arrows, at the brightness of your shining spear. You march across the earth with indignation, you trample down the nations in wrath. You come out to save your people, to save your anointed. You crush the leader of the house with the wicked, you strip him from foot to neck. You pierce his head with his own spears. His warriors storm out to scatter us, gloating as if ready to secretly devour the weak. You tread the sea with your horses, stirring up the vast water. So you can read that, and you might think that this is talking about a war scene from a movie. But look again at some of this vivid imagery. You took the sheath from your bow. The arrows are ready. You split the earth with the rivers. The mountains see you and shudder. You march across the earth. You trample down nations. You come out to save your people. You crush the leader of the house of the wicked. You strip him foot to neck. You pierce his head with his own spears. You tread the sea with your horses. You read all of that. Weapons clashing, armies advancing, chaos everywhere. You'd think this is a description of nation fighting against nation. That's not what this is. Saying, this is what happens when God shows up. There is no fight. You just overwhelm them and you take it. Like this is God stepping on to the battlefield, not as a spectator, not as a distant judge, but as a warrior king who is fighting for his people and opposes everything that stands against them. This is the God that Habakkuk is talking to. And that shows us something important, that God is not passive. He is active. He is fighting evil and for his people. Like God is not just sitting back watching this happen. He's not passive. God is active. He's not indifferent to evil. He's moving against it. Now, that kind of God, like active, confronting evil, like advancing, I think that often clashes with what we've been taught to think about God. Like we haven't just generally, culturally, been taught to think about God this way because we've been taught that as long as love is present, then God is there, right? Because God is love, love is God. We get that confused. But as long as love is present, that's all that really matters. Because love doesn't fight. Love just nods. Love just affirms. Love stays quiet. Love accepts everything. So if that's what we think love is, and we've put love up on this equal pedestal where love is God, God is love, we've made them equal, then we should also think that that's how God is going to act, right? Like God doesn't correct, God doesn't, he doesn't punish, he doesn't judge, he just nods, he affirms, he accepts everything. But that's not love. That's indifference. Like if someone harms your child, you're not scheduling coffee to talk about it. You're showing up. Why? Because something in you rises up. Like love steps in. Love confronts. Love acts. Love protects. Love actually confronts what's wrong. Love is willing to fight for what matters. Like if something threatens that which you love, you show up. And the more you love something, the more fiercely your response is going to be to that threat. Like, I love Chipotle. Like, when my dog is sniffing around my Chipotle bowl at home, I say, hey, stop. He's threatening it. But if my son is chasing his lacrosse ball in the street and a car is coming down, guess what? I'm not going to be like, hey, get out of the street. My reaction is going to be a lot stronger because that which I love is threatened even more. So take that, now multiply it infinitely. God doesn't just see evil and shrug. He's not indifferent to evil and just staying neutral, because here's what real love does. Real love doesn't just comfort the victim, but real love confronts the one that's actually doing the harm. And that's what we see God doing here. That's what Habakkuk is showing us. That God is not just a comforting presence, but he is also a committed defender. This collides with what we've been taught about who God is and how God loves. Because we want a God who loves, but not a God who judges. The thing is you can't have one without the other. Because if we have a God who never judges, if God never judges evil, then that means abuse goes unanswered, evil just gets to win, injustice stand, oppression wins, pride is rewarded, guilty go free, and that's not love. Love requires stepping in. Like, if that's what we define love as, that's not love, that's apathy. Which means when you look at the brokenness in your life, you look at the brokenness in the world around you, God is not ignoring it. God sees it. God knows what's happening. He cares about it, and he will deal with it. Like, you've got to know this, that God's justice is not the opposite of his love. It's proof of it. And he will not let evil have the last word. Now, I want you to see this clearly, because this is where the gospel just explodes. The same God who shows up as a warrior in Habakkuk 3 is the Jesus who steps into history that we read about in the Gospels. Now, don't get this twisted. Jesus never stopped being a warrior. Revelation 19 tells us that one day he is going to come back. He's going to return on a white horse as a knight, says, eyes like fire, sword coming from his mouth, King of Kings written on his thigh. That day is coming, but first, he shows up humbly. First, he shows up lowly. Because what he has to do is, before he deals with all the enemies like out there, he first has to deal with the enemy in here. He has to deal with sin. He has to deal with your sin. He has to deal with my sin. And here's the shock of the gospel, that he never stopped being a warrior. But when he shows up, when he's born in that manger, when he walks the earth, he doesn't show up as a warrior to destroy us, but he chooses to be destroyed for us. So if you're ever sitting there thinking like, man, if God shows up, if God can really see into my life, if God can see what's going on in my head, if God can see the decisions I've made, if God can see the thoughts I've had, if God can see what I do in private, if God actually sees those and he shows up, I'm in trouble. You know what the gospel says? It's already happened. He's already showed up. He already knows all of that. And he made a way for you. He didn't destroy you. He chose to save you. The judgment that was aimed at you falls on him. God's wrath poured out on him. The punishment that we deserve for our sin, Jesus took. Everything that we read about, this overwhelming power and wrath and glory of God, that God says that coming judgment is what this deserves, Jesus took it all. And that's not the version of Christianity that we often put on coffee mugs. But that's the only version that saves, that God chose not to destroy us, and instead he chooses to save us. And that can't be ignored. And that demands a response, because once you see who God is, like once you see what he has done, and once you realize the weight of your own sin, there's only one proper response. It's not to argue, it's not to negotiate, it's not to clean yourself up first. You simply ask for mercy. Because when you feel the weight of your own sin and you see who God is, you have no other option. And that brings us to our third point, that God is not to be managed. He is to be trusted. So we run to him for mercy through Jesus. Like a God that we can manage is not a God that can save us. And God's not to be managed. He is to be ran to be trusted. Here's what I want to do. I want to back up to verse 2 in chapter 3. This is how he actually starts his prayer. Lord, I have heard the report about you. Lord, I stand in awe of your deeds. Revive your work in these years. Make it known in these years. Catch this line. This is the line. In your wrath, remember mercy. That's the line. That's the shift. That's the prayer. In your wrath, remember mercy. Habakkuk isn't saying, God, lower your standards. God, explain everything to me. He's simply saying, God, be merciful. God, remember mercy. Because Habakkuk, the shift happened. He's seen something now. He's not only seen that God is powerful, but now he's seen that God is holy, that God is just, that God is uncompromising. And when you see that in your life, just like Habakkuk, something shifts. You realize that you're just not sitting back watching all of this unfold, but now you're a part of this story. You're in it. You're not just asking God to deal with all of the evil out there, but you're asking God to deal with the evil in here. Deal with your sin, because you see him rightly, you feel the weight of your sin, and you realize that now you're standing in the line of his justice. So the prayer changes. It's no longer, God, go get them. It's, God, what about me? God, don't forget me. If you're going to move in power, if you're going to confront sin, if you're going to bring justice, if that's what you're going to do, remember mercy. God, please remember mercy. Because at this point, mercy is not just a nice idea anymore. When you see God for who he is and you feel the weight of your own sin, you realize it's your only hope. So Habakkuk started this book saying, God, what are you doing? And now he's saying, God, please don't give us what we deserve. God, remember mercy. That's the shift. And when you start seeing God clearly, like you stop accusing him and you start getting very honest about your own heart. Now, we don't need God to be less just. We don't want him to be less just. We need him to be merciful. And that's the shift many people never make. We want God to adjust his standards instead of asking for mercy. But here's the truth. God will not lower his holiness to accommodate your sin, but he will give you mercy to carry you through it. God's not going to bring himself down to accommodate the sin in our lives, but he's going to offer us mercy to cover it. And that mercy is not vague, it's not automatic, it's not generic, but it is found in the person of Jesus. Now, let me wrap all of this together for you. Here's the last thing that you have, your key principle for today. Is that when you see God rightly, holy, powerful, and just, you stop editing him. You start trusting him, and you run to Jesus for mercy. Because you know that's your only response. Now, next week, we're going to see where all of this lands. Because Habakkuk ends this book with one of the most powerful statements in all of the Bible. Like, Habakkuk's world is falling apart. And as his whole world is collapsing around him, you know how he ends? Yet I will rejoice. How do you get there? You get there when you see God clearly, when you realize what he's done, and you realize that's the only place where your hope really is. So here's the question that I want you to sit with. Do you have the real God, or do you have a version of him that you're just comfortable with? Because the real God will humble you. The real God will confront you. The real God will correct you. But he will also save you. He will also offer you mercy. Like, listen, you don't need to become a better version of yourself. You don't need to clean yourself up first. You don't need to try harder. You need mercy. And that mercy is found in Jesus. Not in your effort, not in your morality, not in your church attendance. It's found in Jesus. Like, he lived the perfect life you couldn't live. He died the death that we deserve, and he offers you life that you couldn't earn. Like, some of you have been trying for years to get your life cleaned up. How's that going for you? Maybe it's time you stop trying and you start trusting. You run to him for mercy. You've been in church for a long time. You know the songs, you know the language, you know the words, but you've never actually surrendered. You never actually said, Jesus, I need mercy. Jesus, I need to trust you. Like, don't leave here today without doing that. Because one day, like, that warrior king that we read about, he is going to return. We don't have to question and we don't have to wonder if when he comes back, if he's going to judge. We know he is. But man, we do want to make sure we're standing on his side when he does. Let's pray.